Welcome to the Jamodi podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it. Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Ballogy. Manage and measure your players' skill development and increase accountability year-round utilizing the Ballogy app. Boost inter-squad competition with drills backed by the National High School Basketball Coaches Association, including a 40-shot Ballogy skills assessment. Please visit ballogy.com/teams for information on how you can provide this resource for your team. I'd love to know a little bit about your philosophy on scouting reports and also in-game adjustments, because I think some coaches go really deep into the scouting report. Others, it's just three things. They keep it very simple. And then on the in-game adjustments, some guys are just, hey, process. We're going to keep trying to do what we're doing just at a higher level with more effort, execute better, or we're going to make dramatic changes. Where do you line up? I think those are almost two questions, right? Where do you line up there?
You know, the game has moved, especially at the higher levels. Analytics is such a big part of what everybody's doing now. And it's kind of the craze. I think we land somewhere in the middle. We do look at analytics. With all the stuff out there now with Huddle Assist and whatever program each program decides to use as far as scouting goes, we have access to all of that information and we definitely utilize it. But I think the art of having a feel for what you're looking at when you're watching film or you're watching an opponent live is also a big piece for us still. I can look at a stat line that I look at as far as analytics go, and they can tell me one thing. I just always want to make sure that when I'm watching film or I'm watching another team live when we're scouting them, that I feel like what my eyes are telling me also matches what the analytics say. Just an example I'll throw out there is, you can watch a team play that you're scouting, and a kid's 1 of 8 from the 3-point line, but they look very comfortable every time they're catching that sucker and firing it. And so, that's one of the things that we always try to gauge is, the analytics are telling us 1 for 8, but is that the type of kid that eventually is going to go 7 for 8?
Right.
And so I think there's still some art there as far as when you're watching film or you're watching another team live, what do your eyes tell you? And then the same thing for us when I'm scouting us, when we're self-scouting. There's nobody that knows your team better than you do as a coach. And so if your best player or a few of your best players, are in a slump the last 5 or 6 games, the analytics are going to tell you that those are low percentage shots for them. But if you've had the kid in your program for several years and eventually they're going to crawl out of it, that's one of those things that, to me as a coach, you definitely still have to have a feel for as well. So individually, that's kind of the way I see analytics, and then also how we would do a scouting report on somebody else. And then the second part of that, team wise, we always try to figure out, especially at our level, but I feel like you see this all the way up, even into the collegiate and pro level. Figure out who you don't have to guard. If there's somebody out there or a couple people out there that you don't have to guard, it really shrinks the floor for you defensively, no matter if you're playing man or zone, or maybe if you choose to junk them if they have 1 or 2 that you don't have to guard. And so do the analytics match up to what your eyes are telling you in reference to that kind of stuff? And that's one thing that we've had a lot of luck with over the years is figuring out 1 or 2 kids from the other team that we feel like aren't as big of threats and then shrinking the floor and giving more attention to the better players. And then the flip side of that is trying to create space for your best players. Are your best players post players? Are your best players, kids that you can throw the ball to in space and they can create their own stuff or get down in the lane and draw fouls or drop it off and kick it out for shots? And so I think all that goes into scouting and all that goes into the analytics of can you get the ball to the paint? I mean, can you get the ball to the third side of the floor? I mean, the analytics point to if you can do those 2 things at a high level, you're going to have a higher points per possession. And so those are all things that we consistently weigh in reference to analytics.
And I love that nugget about finding out who you don't have to guard. And it made me think of Paul Mills when he was at Oral Roberts. We got to have one of these talks, and he literally said that even at their level, he said there's usually one guy on each team that you don't really have to worry about. And that kind of blew my mind because I thought, yeah, okay, at the 5A TAPS level, yeah, there's some teams where there's one, two, maybe three. I've had teams where we've had one or two guys that, man, they're really trying to stop them from shooting. I don't think they need to, but hopefully our the idea of shooting a ton of threes or people watch us play, it's a little smoke and mirrors. The fact that all of them look like they can shoot like that 1-for-8 guy. If we look like we can and we're confident, then hopefully they believe that all of our guys do it the same, even though we know they don't. But that is interesting. How many times do we guard all five players, whether it's pressure man, but we're giving them all the same amount of attention, where obviously we don't want to give up open jump shots. But when they don't have the ball, man, if we can shrink the floor, like you said, make that box more cluttered, that's a great nugget.
Yeah, and I think you see it even at the pro level. I mean, they're playing drop coverage on the ball screens when you turn on the NBA finals or the conference finals, and that's essentially what they're doing is they're trying to shrink the floor so they have less space to cover. You referenced the in-game adjustments. One of the things that I've never had a ton of luck with as a head coach is drawing something up, just scrapping it, during the middle of the game, scrapping everything we're doing and then going to something completely different. I think every adjustment that we've ever had success with is something that we've already planned before the game, and maybe even having an adjustment to that adjustment. But I've never had a bunch of luck with going in at halftime and just saying, okay, we're going to completely do something off the wall and something we haven't practiced. And
Yeah.
so that, as far as adjustments go, I'm sure there's coaches out there that have done that and it's worked. Just throwing something at the wall at halftime or during the middle of the game. But we always try to pre-plan every type of adjustment that we think might be something that we have to do during the game. And so that's kind of where we've always been on in-game adjustments. And it's worked better for us. The small amount of times that I've tried to do something outside the box that we haven't practiced, I just haven't had a whole lot of luck with that.
Coach, you're right on the money. I mean, if late in the game you bring them in and you're drawing up something brand new they've never done before, that's a scary position to be in. Like if that's what we're resulting to right at that point. But I think a lot about the Denver head coach, and I always blank on his name, the Nuggets head coach. But
is it Malone?
Sure, yeah, I just can't think about it. But there's a video of him where he's asked about in-game adjustments and why he didn't make a change, and he said, "Why would I have to make a change when the effort wasn't what it needed to be?" And the execution for what we were trying to do wasn't what it needed to be. He's like, if those two things are missing, there's not an adjustment. Play harder, try to do it right.
Absolutely.
But then I think, because I think sometimes we just make adjustments like things are going pretty well, or it does what we're doing doesn't seem to be working. We make an adjustment, we go to something else, but really what we needed to do was remind our players, however you want to remind them, that there's another level of effort we can get to. And we're not going to make a change until we start executing this correctly. I think that's maybe a distinction. And then once those two things are lining up, okay, maybe it's time we were in man, we're doing it right the way we talked about. We're going to jump into a zone. They're having some success, even though our effort and execution is great. But I don't know. I've felt myself at times wondering, should I make a change right now? It's not working. Well, evaluate, is the effort right? Is the execution right?
Absolutely. And then I think you fall back on, at what point is it just this is what we're going to do, and you guys are either going to win or lose doing this, but this is the hill that we're willing to die on. And I think that, that we've gotten a lot of mileage out of that attitude as well. This is who we are. And, like you just said, we got to play harder and we got to execute better. It's nice to always have an adjustment, but at what point do you make that adjustment? I think it differs for each team and differs, based on who you're playing. But a lot of times if you have to go to the adjustment, you're in trouble anyways.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Rarely are you going to the adjustment because you're up 20 and everything's going great. That's a good point. Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.